website and print out a pay stub, even if they don't have a formalized payroll system intact. But how much time do you want to spend on this other type of administrative work? That's why more accountants, or even myself, I offer full service payroll, where we'll do it concurrently. I'll have the employer input the hours and everything into a web-based system. We'll generate the paychecks. They can cut the paychecks at their site, or we can mail it to them, just very much like ADP or Paychecks. Otherwise, people could go to ADP Paychecks. There's a slew of companies out there that will help you. And if you're a real small business, especially if there's only maybe the owner and one other partner, it's even less expensive if you took a paycheck once a month. Because the service bureau that you'll have to utilize to do this, it's just cheaper to do it monthly than it is, weekly or biweekly.
Okay. Now that brings me to another point, actually paying yourself. Now, is it paying yourself a salary or paying yourself back for the money that you put in?
Well, again, that's a very good question, because there's been a lot of cases on that recently where, and I'll give it to you, and most of these cases have come up with an S-Corp, because there's been a lot of abuses where a company made, let's say they had a net profit of $100,000, and the main shareholder, let's say there's only one shareholder, and that shareholder, who's really the president, the shareholder, and the only employee of the company, is taking a $10,000 salary. Now, the problem with that, the government's getting employment tax on the $10,000 salary. They're not getting employment tax on the other $100,000. All right, but the individual shareholder, once that passes through his return, will pay his current, regular tax liability rate on that. And there's been cases, and and they're doing more and more audits on this now also. And here's where we talk about reasonable compensation. And the test for this is, if you were doing the same type of work for an independent third party, what would your normal salary be? So in this situation where the shareholder employee took a $10,000 salary, if he were doing that work for another corporation, his salary may be $50,000. You follow?
Yep.
And that's what the IRS holds you to. And those are the tests that they look at.
Very interesting. Nick, I know you've worked with many different types of entities, companies, big and small. Maybe you can share some final words of wisdom to us on, and I'm sure you've seen many companies go in with tons of energy, full of excitement, ready to go, and some fail and some succeed. I'm sure you've seen it all, Nick, from your side. Maybe you can share some words of wisdom to us.
Well, words of wisdom are not mine. They've been around for a while. And it has something to do with those who fail to plan to fail. And basically, what I try to tell even new companies, that when I market my own services to a lot of new businesses, they'll say, well, I'm just in the startup phases of the business. I don't know what I'm going to really be doing yet. I can't afford an accountant. Well, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, I would tell everybody, once you first start a business, you really should sit down with an accountant and a tax professional and see basically what their ideas are, because what you really need to do is you got to put together some type of a business plan. It doesn't have to be all that formal and beautiful on paper, but you have to have something down to use as a guide. You have to have some type of a budget that you're going to put in place, looking at some cash flow projections and things of that nature. And you got to utilize that, and you've got to look at variances, for either on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, because that's going to keep you in line. It's like anything else. Like if you want to lose weight, you have a plan. If you want to start, working out and lifting weights, you have a plan. You have a goal. And the same thing with your business. And you have to treat your business as seriously as any other facet of your life where you want to succeed.
Well, that sounds like great words of advice, Nick. I really appreciate it. There's another question that came in. There was a no-namer question, but they're talking about when you're taking money from friends and family, or you're borrowing money somehow or another. I'm just kind of dissecting this question. And also, we might as well add venture capital. When you're putting that into a company, how does that affect the company, Nick?
Well, basically, any type of loan that you're putting into the company is just that. Mainly, it's a loan. Venture capital is a little different because they're taking an equity stake at some point. All right, so that's going to be equity plus a liability or a loan that has to be paid back. But if you're borrowing from family, you could borrow it as an individual and contribute that borrowing to your corporation. Because let's face it, when you first start a business, the business has nothing. So how does the business get started? A financial injection of capital by the owner of the business. So basically, you would report that either the corporation could list it as a loan from the person who lent the money, or it could be given to the shareholder of the corporation, and that shareholder could loan that money to the corporation.
Okay. One more question, Nick. When you're starting to receive royalties, in most of the time in the licensing agreements, there's a right for the inventor, the person who owns the product that just licensed it, the licensor, to review the books of a licensee, which is the manufacturer and the distributor of the product, the one that's paying you a royalty. Now, what do you do when that time comes around? I mean, realistically, they give you, every quarter they send you royalty reports, and you're kind of just taking their word on it. But
exactly.
What do? You call up somebody like you and you say, listen, Nick, we have to go to XYZ company and audit their books?
Yes, that's exactly it. But then again, it's a cost-benefit analysis because, once you perform an audit could be very expensive and could run into a lot of money. So it's all a threshold of how much money are you receiving and what do you really feel that you should be receiving. And a lot of the products that are out there's a lot of information that the inventor who's receiving the royalties could basically find from the Internet, find from trade publications and magazines as to the anticipated sales volume, and basically backing into the royalties they're receiving, and just use that as a gauge. And if it's way off, then, and also if it's way off, and if you're talking a serious amount of money, then it may be, prudent for them to hire someone to go in and audit the books.
Okay. Very interesting. So, Nick, I'd like to kind of conclude the show at this point, and we really appreciate you being on the show. This is Nick Orlando. And, Nick, do you have a website? And I know that you've written a couple articles. Maybe you can reference one of them?
Sure. I've especially for people that want more information about the different type of entity selection, I have basically written an article on ezine.com. It's ezine.com, and it's what form of business entity should one choose. And I wrote a couple of other articles there as well. My current website is www.noatax.com. And that's not to imply that people that come to me don't pay any taxes. That's just for Nick Orlando Accounting and Tax Services.
It could be that. No, I'm okay.
Well, I don't want the regulators to think of that, and it definitely isn't that. We have to do things, especially with all the automation and everything. You want to be prudent and you want to be above board with everything you're doing because, let's face it, if any of us go to jail, no matter how successful our business is, it's not going to be successful any longer.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Nick, thank you again. We really appreciate your time and your advice and all your information that you shared with the inventors and entrepreneurs and small business owners out there. Thank you again.
Anytime. It was a pleasure, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, Mojo 3D Printers, Carter DeLuca, Farrell & Schmidt, China2West.com, United Inventors Association, UIAUSA.org, Inventors Digest. You can subscribe to the magazine, or you can go to inventorsdigest.com and get there's always updates on there and great information and resources. And please check out my new blog. I've been posting on inventingtips.com for the last month or so. Check it out and take a look at the hot topics that are on the invention radar. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Signing off from Got Invention Radio. Keep on inventing. Speak to you soon. Thanks.